everybody, it's the last week of October and it's time to have a look at the month ahead. You know, a lot of people do ask why I look at the month ahead, not at the beginning of the month, but rather always around the 23rd or the 24th or 25th of the previous month. Well, those of you who check your star signs in the newspapers or online know that the dates given are always from about the 22nd to about the 21st of the following month. Those are averages. There is an astronomical measurement that tells us when exactly the sun enters a new sign. It's a tiny bit different every year, but that's also why here we look at the beginning of the astrological month, which is always around today, the 24th of the month, somewhere around there. So here we are at the beginning of the month of Scorpio, which actually technically started even yesterday, the 23rd, and looking at what to expect in this month ahead. Of course, we all know that there is an election to be held next week, and last month I said it was going to be relatively quiet in the run-up in terms of all the politicking, and that does seem to be true. Much less of the chaos and extreme mudslinging that we usually see in the run-up to an election. We just saw kind of a slightly toned down version of all that mudslinging. It's kind of a little bit like there isn't even a point. Everyone's on their own agendas. And that's what shows very clearly in our chart for the month ahead. In fact, when you look at the chart for the month ahead, knowing that there's an election, it also seems like each party is kind of in their own corner, doing their own thing, and almost irrespective of each other. So, not surprisingly, we can see the leader of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, being somewhat hidden in the chart for the month ahead. Of course, in his role as the president of the country, which seems little more than a role half the time, that is a little bit alarming, and he's not as seen as he should be. But that can also relate to an unnecessary amount of traveling that could be done as well. Either way we look at it, Cyril Ramaphosa is not as visible as perhaps he should be at the time of the many changes and challenges, as well as not exactly a new phase for government. It's only a local election, but certainly at a local level that's true. And as we all know, there are places in the country where that would be very important. To the extent that we can see any outcome of the election using the month ahead charts, well, you know, it's always been that the outcome of any election in this country is mostly a foregone conclusion. Certainly that's been the case for many, many, many decades on all sides of the political arena. But the interesting thing about the outcome of this election is that the charts show the opposition parties doing much better than perhaps is expected, sometimes even by them. Not enough, of course, to make significant differences, but certainly in some places. On the whole, the feeling of the charts is, well, given that the outcome is largely a foregone conclusion, it's not a national election, it's taken to represent a kind of confidence in the national government, and that looks like it takes a beating in this election. And in some ways, the invisibility of the president and president of the ANC is quite telling, that there's less to crow about than perhaps they might be expecting. So there definitely is a little bit of a shift and a hint of shifts to come, perhaps in the gaining of power of the opposition. Official opposition, Democratic Alliance, does also look a little bit too self-contained. So the ANC is looking a little bit too hidden, and the DA is looking a little bit too self-contained, as if they're not bothering to look over their garden wall. And I'm not sure that's such a great strategy either. It's looking rather isolated in the chart, but still benefits from the fact that the opposition is shown to have the upper hand. Nevertheless, the strong wins by the ruling party, which has always been the nature of politics in this country for generations, does show, and does show as in many ways it's still the popular choice. So, you know, the people's choice, although that's the principle of an election anyway, it does show it remains consistent with what people want. For better or for worse, our democracy is functioning in that way. as shown in the chart. And that at least is hopeful, even if it's a rather strange democracy that always seems to contain a one party and lots of small parties, in whichever generation you might be looking to find that. But for the most part, popular choice or not, South Africans are feeling more strong after the election as we go forward in the month ahead, in the sense of we're having good connections with other countries. That can be good for sport, is what that often refers to, as well as the diplomatic and other channels which we might not always be aware of. It is good for trade and increased, perhaps, recovery of international trade benefiting us, and generally improved international relations. We've already, of course, seen that with the change of visa restrictions that have happened, and it presumably goes into all sorts of other areas where our connections with other countries are relevant. That helps us feel strong. The health area of the chart, that's public health, is looking a little bit unpredictable, which is not usually a good sign. It means there can be an unexpected development in the area of health. And those kind of developments often actually involve authorities. So in the past we've seen people with their fingers in the jam jar, and we might be seeing that kind of thing again. It's not necessarily actually the people or the virus or whatever it may be that the problem is, so much as the officials, and once again the president of the country, stroke president of the ANC, is in a spotlight that cannot find him. So the invisible president continues to maintain his behind the scenes approach to most of the crises in the country. In fact, the chart actually shows for him a strong focus on himself as personality, as person. It's a little bit like it's beginning to show that the situation with the elections, the ANC's performance in it, all of those kind of things, for Ramaphosa, the issues are much more about him and how he is seen within the party and his relationships and power moves within the party than it's got anything to do with the country or the people or anything like that. So outside of health, it could more worryingly indicate other kinds of unrest. When it's not showing unrest in an area, department of life, it can actually mean amongst the people. So that can mean, at worst, general unrest out there amongst people, whether they be rioting or whatever they're doing, or more likely in much more specific labor-related situations, which is what it's usually related to. Nevertheless, can also indicate that the police services increasingly come into the spotlight for not very good reasons. Services, labor, all of those things are a little bit disturbed in the chart, sometimes associated with public health, often associated with labor, and that's what we do need to be on top of. But the strength of the country and the kind of optimism of the people is what's going to carry us through. So, what's happening for you? Aries, it looks like this month is about dealing with some stuff that you probably haven't wanted to deal with for the longest time. It's one of those months where you've got to look at what you've swept under the carpet or been ignoring, pretending wasn't there, all of those kind of things which we all do. It's just time to deal with it. And the thing about the nature of those things is they're a little bit like, the dressing gown that hangs over the end of the bed that looks like a bogeyman in the middle of the night, but is actually fine once you switch the lights on. And so it's really just about cleaning out, finishing unresolved business, tidying up the stuff that you don't really want to tidy up. It does mean it can also be challenging in many areas of life to not avoid what you have to deal with. Not only the stuff from the past, but the general challenge for the month is don't avoid things, deal with them. Also, don't avoid confrontation. You might have to confront certain people, and helps you get some of those things out of the way. It's also a great idea to just refocus your motives. Look at a lot of things in your life and ask yourself why you're doing them. That'll help you deal with the stuff that you want to get behind you and wrapped up once and for, but it'll also help you sort out the stuff that's actually dragging on you didn't realize it, and end up with a much cleaner plate to go forward with. Taurus, your relationships are looking really important and really good at the moment. That's not quite the same as everything's going smoothly and easily. And actually, because they're looking good at the moment, this is a great opportunity to address some stuff, the good stuff or the bad stuff, whatever might be there, and actually resolve some lingering things or whatever might be needing a bit of resolution. Because you're strong at this time, and it's also where you're being seen or heard. So it's time to put your case forward if there's anything that bothers you or something's going on, and it's time to put yourself forward and actually help move the relationship forward, showing your feelings. Your emotional center looks really strong at this time, just like everything else about you. Trust that better. Taurians' biggest problem is that they often doubt themselves or act as if they doubt themselves, even though they don't really doubt themselves. So it's time to really just get those things shared. We're talking mostly about personal relationships, but at some level in any relationship, it's really time to kind of show what you feel or say what you feel and actually benefit from the fact that there's quite a good spotlight on you at the moment that's going to make things really work for you. Anything you want to change, develop in your own personal life, and that also means catching up with some physical stuff, whether it's exercise, health check, or anything like that, great time for this. Gemini, financial matters might be looking a little edgy or a little shaky, but actually you can manage this. You're going to probably have to walk quite a fine line in a few areas, but it's always going to work out in your favor as long as you don't do anything rash and as long as you don't make too many sacrifices. Yes, be it financially or otherwise, you are going to have to depend on someone else or others in some way this month. But that is something that, whatever it may be, you can negotiate to be a very fair and balanced thing. You know, this is a month where you're going to benefit a lot from friends and people that really care about you or that support what it is you do. It doesn't mean they're just giving to you, and maybe they're investing or supporting or something like that, but that is something that you must ensure doesn't weaken you by having you make sacrifices, which they're not expecting either. So it's something that you just take on in a more balanced way. Because on the whole, this is a great time for investing in your own future or in anything that has got a little bit of a time to go to reach its outcome. Things that are developing slowly and that will show perhaps only within a year or more than a year are really the things that are worth putting your energy into now and that are worth getting yourself a little bit dependent on other people for. Take the long view, Gemini, it's going to work. Looking good, Cancerians. Things seem to be working out and falling into place and doing all of that stuff without you even lifting too much of a finger. It's a little bit like the chart is saying the only thing that could push things out and upset the apple cart at the moment is you yourself, and through a usual type of Cancerian way, overreaction. That's the lesson or the challenge this month, is to just guard and balance your own reactions, moderate them in some way, because it's just you who can create this instability at the moment. If you maintain a strong position and a strong center emotionally is really what I mean, then you're going to be able to handle whatever's going on without strong reactions, and you will realize that actually you remain in the strong position, especially with regards to family matters. Things are working out just the way you wanted them to, with you not having to lift too much of a finger or show too much of what you're trying to get done or anything like that. So just take it a little bit back, keep it cool, keep it low on the reactions, and you're actually going to get exactly what you're hoping for. This is a month that's going to bring more optimism and more opportunity, and at the professional level there may even be opportunity to expand yourself and look to further shores in some way or further goals in some way. So a great opportunity to grow. Leos, it looks like things are still taking a little longer and slower than you might want them to go, and you more than ever are not really in control. I mean, we know, and I often talk about it on this show, how we're mostly not in control of very much, and we've got to let go of what we're not in control of. And this is one of those months, Leo, where that is the best advice, because there's also a lot of trivial stuff, but whatever it may be, there's a lot of stuff that you're not in control of that is only worth just letting go and relaxing and letting things happen at the pace that they are happening. The main thing you're not in control of is institutions or groups. It can be governmental type institutions like, tax or whatever that may be, or it could be more directly related to your own life, dealing with bigger groups or institutions or companies in some kind of a way. There is very little you can do about where they're at and what they're doing, but by letting go and not getting your hands too much in there, you can get the best possible outcome for yourself. You also are cautioned that you might be having the wool pulled over your eyes a little bit, or more likely you're not looking at certain things you need to do. A great opportunity lies right now to just wrap things up in many areas of your life, just like some of the other areas of the chart. This is a time to get rid of as much as possible, be it physically, be it emotionally, mentally, whatever else. Just get rid of it, because nothing else out there is in your control anyway. So that is what's in your control, just letting go. Virgo, things are still looking good for you with respect to your relationships with the people around you, and that's especially your social circle. Friends are really important at this particular time. You're going to be getting a lot of help and support from friends, and then at the less personal level, perhaps in your professional life, help and support from others who have, not a huge amount of reason to give it to you, and there it's coming. So don't look a gift horse in the mouth, and that might be important for other things during the course of this month. Accept what is coming to you, and that helps balance out the fact that as a Virgo, you're inclined to give more than you get, and that in the long term creates resentfulness or despair in Virgo. So this is a great opportunity to open your arms and let them give and let them bring, and that's going to get everyone happy and back into balance and enable you to fulfill some of your ideals, because that's what it's about. You are being supported in your efforts to pursue some of your own ideals at this time, so it's a great time to be pursuing those ideals. Maybe dust them off a little bit and ask yourself, have I checked in with myself on why is it that I do what I do, or have my bigger hopes and wishes actually come true? Dust off some of those, get them back onto the agenda. Libra, things continue to work well for you, but you've got to adopt maybe a strategic approach in many of the things that are working so well for you. And that means it's a little bit like certain things have been set into motion, certain things are in place in a certain way. Now you've got to resist messing with that or changing that or intervening where you don't need to intervene. Might mean there's a little of patience, but it really looks in the chart like it's saying step back a little. That idea of step back might also figure in other areas of life, not just where you've put things on the table in a certain way. So there is also a recognition of where you can't make any difference, don't try and make any difference. And again, just step back and allow whoever is in charge or whatever is in charge to play that out for you in the right way. In your personal life, things continue to work well, but just like everywhere else, it's not so much about stepping back, it's just about going with the flow or letting it be more open in terms of what you expect and how you think things should be shaped. Things are working well. Don't try and create a shape or structure or fix them in place in any kind of way. They're managing just fine without that. So this theme of step back is really just about stepping into the flow that you've clearly helped shape already. Now go with what's already there. Scorpio, your birthday is coming up, but it's one of those times when on the one hand, yay, this is me, it's my birthday, I'm feeling good about that, and on the other hand, you actually just want to hang back and not see anyone, not have to deal with anyone. So it's one of those months where you trying to find your own personal space and having to keep putting yourself out there, and that might be something you need to address head on in many areas of your life so that it doesn't cause unnecessarily pain or conflict. Especially in your personal life, make sure that you're making some space for yourself and some space for what it might be that you want to just sort through on your own. There do seem to be some changes happening, like everyone else, you're in a bit of a letting go phase, and so it does mean that there's stuff that you need to realize isn't relevant to you anymore, and like some others, there's stuff that you've been sweeping under the carpet that you need to face. And so this is really a month of ideally looking at yourself and understanding yourself better and what it is that you need and all of those kind of things really are, so that you can go forward without that bleeding into the rest of your life and interfering with your goals and your relationships and those kinds of things, which for the most part, you're doing well with people at the moment, and you could maintain a great deal of strength in your relationships right now, if only you just make sure to create the boundary so that you don't blame them for not giving you the space to be you. Sagittarians, things look like they are working quite well for you this month, and that even includes the financial side of things, which isn't always the case for you, as you don't hang on to things very easily. You spend widely, let things slip through your fingers, but have a great time doing it. So that might be, this is one of those months. But it actually does look like this is a time to really be with your loved ones, stay at home, build your strength on your home territory, home base. This isn't about spreading yourself far and wide or traveling or doing all those things you love to do. And actually realizing and appreciating there's a great deal of strength and resources to be had where you are right now. This is a great time to be putting your energy into important work and important goals. If you can focus your energies just like into one thing at this particular time, you can achieve enormous results, because there just really seems to be a rhythm that gets set up once you do that this month. So that means it's also a great time to put new goals into action, or anything that needs that kind of little help. Find its own rhythm, get going, and as long as you keep focused, is really going to work for you. That means it's not a time to just leave it to luck and say, okay, well, it's all working for me, I can just have a great time. As I'm saying, it's kind of depending on you, but it's going to work because you're working right now, so make it happen. Capricorns, as we know, sometimes as many steps forward as there are steps backwards, and this is one of those times where you'll find yourself returning to an earlier situation, perhaps even as far back as last year, not a year most people want to have to think too much about. But it might just be the general idea of returning to the past, returning to something from before. It's a different version of the unfinished business that other people are dealing with at this particular time. For you, it's not so much about unfinished business, it's just about, well, you're still dealing with that, or there it is again. And so, again, the letting go of trying to change that, wishing it was something else, or trying to move forward when everything is stepping backwards. The best thing to do is get into the rhythm and the pace of these things. The slowness is actually potentially to your benefit if you give it long enough to do that. So pacing yourself correctly and letting it happen much more slowly is a lot of what it's about this month. You're also dealing with family matters, more likely related to siblings. Again, things are developing slowly, and there does seem to be a lot of difficulty and challenge going on, but slowly things will work out in a good way or produce good results in the end. Capricorns, this is a time to sit tight, because eventually the results will show. Aquarius, things are going well and everything should stay good, but as ever, the challenge is yourself. You could be losing interest or losing focus or beginning to put your attention somewhere else, and that's going to be working against you in some way. So it's time to actually realize, let me work with what I've got. It's actually going to grow. It is a good time to introduce new things. You can introduce new goals and start new things. You're not on a one track. The important thing is about not letting go of the track or tracks that you are on as well. If you are losing interest in something, this is too soon to change tack. But it's okay to introduce a new tack or two. The issue here is that you can be your own worst enemy at this time. Probably not in some big dramatic way, but it's in the subtle ways that you need to pay more attention, because you don't necessarily realize that you could be shooting yourself in the foot. So that's by letting go of something too soon, or giving up something that you don't need to give up. And that's also something you can watch yourself for. The alternative, as in not giving up something that you should be giving up, but you'll know which one is true in your own life or your own situation. That's the thing to focus on, and changing that, making sure that doesn't shoot you in the foot, and things continue to grow for you. Pisces also need to be a little bit careful of working against yourself or being your own worst enemy. It's not as extreme as that. It's really just about not gaining when you could or should. That's how it's working for Pisces. So making sure that you get what's due to you, or that you get some kind of recognition, feedback, or reward, as the case may be. Not selling yourself short and not making sacrifices. That's where the everlasting Piscean challenge, don't make too many sacrifices, lies at this particular time. So it could also be about a little bit about being selfish, but that's with regards to things you love, things you like, the stuff that's all about what gives you a sense of pleasure and which reminds you of who you are. This is a month to do things which remind you of who you are. Those kind of things are often things that we liked doing when we were children, or things that fall into the category of sport or hobbies or those kind of things. But all of that we do because it makes us feel more like ourselves. It's the familiar thing that I love. So those kind of things are also going to happen in your love life. It's a great opportunity to look at what do I need, and let me make sure the relationship, whichever relationship it may be, is working to benefit both of us, and that I'm also getting what I need out of the relationship and not just being happy to give and happy to love you. Get some of that back. So, good luck for election day. Get vaccinated. I'll see you next week at the same time.